What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Tait Talk Sports Podcast. Here with another NFL edition with our resident Steeler fan, Walker Ruckman. Today, we're going to be talking about our Week 2 picks. We're going to look back at how we did on those. We're going to talk a little bit about the Chargers and how they're doing. Then we're going to discuss whether or not the Patriots are a contender for the Super Bowl or the playoffs. And then we're going to obviously do our Week 3 picks. So first things first, look back at the picks from the week. I personally went 11-5. Could have done a lot better, but I think the two games that really hurt me was that Cowboys comeback against the Falcons, obviously a tough one. Almost had the upset there, but couldn't get that one. And then that Giants comeback that was almost complete against the Bears. They had a chance on the 10 to score a touchdown and win the game, but just couldn't quite pull through. So at the end of it, I'm 11-5.
Yeah, last week I went 12-4. Pretty good week for me. Two games that really hurt me were that Jags-Titans game where Gostkowski hit that 49-yard field goal, which is pretty crazy considering he couldn't buy one last week, so that hurt. And then another game was that Vikings-Colts game. I mean, what a poor effort by the Vikings. I mean, they couldn't get anything going. 11 points against that Colts defense. Poor effort.
I know I'm going to talk a little bit about that Colts team a little bit later, but we're going to move on to the Chargers. Another interesting game with Justin Herbert stepping in as a starter. Only found out about it a few minutes before kickoff when Tyrod Taylor aggravated some bruised ribs in pregame warmups. I thought that was a really cool thing to see Justin Herbert come out there and throw the ball over the place, run it a little bit. I thought it was a real impressive debut for someone who didn't even know he was starting until just before the end. I mean, another thing with the Chargers, they've got that stacked defense. I mean, we saw it even going against the powerful offense of Mahomes. I mean, they were getting home almost every time, it felt like. Not that the Chiefs have the greatest offensive line, but, I mean, they were there every time, it seemed like, with Ingram and Bosa on both sides. I mean, that is tough, and they got some of the best corners in the league. I mean, it looks bright for them, and they've got Austin Eckler at running back. He showed up against the Chargers. I thought it was a really impressive game for the Chargers.
Yeah, it's a little sneak peek of the future, I think, for that Chargers team. I mean, you liked what you saw from Herbert, considering he was thrown in there last minute. Good mix of run and pass. All you can really ask for from a rookie, especially in your first game, is, give us a chance to win. They took that Chiefs team, that Super Bowl winning Chiefs team, to overtime. I mean, that's a good loss if you're losing by a 56-yard field goal to the defending champs. So, liked what I saw.
I completely agree. Next up, we're going to talk about the Patriots and whether or not they're a contender. They had a really impressive performance this weekend on one of the, in my opinion, game of the week, Sunday Night Football. Just such a game. I think the biggest takeaway for me is Cam is in command of that offense. It is his offense. He was really orchestrating it out there. They were he didn't actually run the ball as much as week one this week himself, but he was throwing it all over the place, throwing it like almost the best he has in his whole career. Obviously, a complete running threat. He's so big. There were probably 2 or 3 times he should have got sacked last night, but because of his just how he's built and how much he weighs, just able to escape tacklers, guys not expecting to have to tackle someone so big. I think the biggest question mark for me is that defense, letting up 5 touchdowns against a good offense and Russell Wilson, but you're going to have to close some gaps there. You can't let up 5 touchdowns and be in shootouts all the time. You're going to need to control the game a little bit more. I think the biggest thing for me that would keep them from being a contender in the playoffs is what they can do when the run gets stuffed. Obviously, a big part of their game plan this year is that running game, and it kind of got stuffed on Sunday night, and they did a good job of throwing it. It's a weaker defense that they did throw it against, but they did well. But to me, that's the biggest question mark. What happens when they get down on the 1-yard line and the run isn't working? Can they pass out of that? Can they find some other outlet that they can go to on the offense to get the offense going?
I loved what I saw from Cam Sunday night. I mean, that looked like Panthers MVP Cam. That gave me a little flashback. He's got extra motivation this year. Panthers basically kicked him to the curb. This offseason he had a tough time trying to find a team. Patriots picked him up for very little money. Excellent deal for the Patriots, great value. And I mean, he's ready to go out and just annihilate. And what I saw Sunday night, that's prime Cam. That I'm looking forward to seeing what else he can do.
Absolutely. I mean, he's on that 1-year contract. He's looking to make himself known and probably get paid by a big team next year. Hopefully, as long as he stays healthy, he'll be able to get paid. We're going to look ahead now to our Week 3 picks. First game we're going to look at is the Thursday game, which is the Dolphins against the Jaguars. Bit of an interesting matchup. Two teams that at least were thought at the beginning of the season to somewhat be tanking. Obviously, the Jaguars have something to say about that in their first 2 weeks. Beating the Colts in week 1 and then almost beating the Titans in week 2. I mean, Minshew is just putting on a performance. I think this is a really interesting matchup, seeing Fitzpatrick and Minshew go against each other, kind of the anti-tank quarterbacks. The teams that have them don't really want to win, and yet here they are winning games. I think the Jaguars, though, show a bit more potential, a bit more youth. I'm taking Jaguars in this one.
Yeah, I actually like both these teams. I think they're a lot better than what people think they really are. Dolphins, I mean, you've lost 2 close games to the Bills and the Patriots. Jags give the Titans a tough time last week, beat the Colts week 1. I think it's going to be actually a pretty good game. I still like Minshew, though. I think the Jags are going to win.
Absolutely. Next game, we got the 49ers and the Giants. 49ers, a team, along with many others, unfortunately, this week, bitten by the injury bug. Nick Bosa out for the year, ACL, along with another quality defender hurt almost, I believe, out for the whole year. I'm not sure about that, but beat up defensively, beat up at quarterback. Garoppolo, obviously, out 4 to 6 weeks. I think it'll be interesting to see what the 49ers do. They have a serviceable backup in Nick Mullins, and, they've got the run game. Kittle's still a bit hurt. I think there's a lot of question marks for that team right now. Can they keep it up without that quarterback and without, a bit of pass rush? They still have good pass rushers, but I tell you what, I'm going to keep going with the Giants, even though they have, gone against what I thought they'd do in last week. But even without Saquon, I do like them this week. I like Daniel Jones. I like what they have at receiver. That defense has got holes, but I think normally I would not take the Giants here. But when they're beat up, when the 49ers are beat up and they don't know exactly what they're going to be now, I'm going to take the Giants.
Both these teams really hurt by injuries. I mean, and you saw last week how the 49ers, several players spoke out about the condition of the field at MetLife. Here they are next week, like right now, they're at the same field. We'll see what they have to say about that. I still like the Niners, though. I think they have pretty serviceable backups. Giants, no Saquon. What's the run game going to look like? I got the Niners.
Good pick there. Next game, we got Washington football team versus the Browns. Another team that kind of looks like they're somewhat tanking, although they did win in week 1. But Washington football team, they've got potential at a bunch of spots. They've obviously got Chase Young, who is already a beast. He's already making a ton of noise. I mean, he's already out there looking like an all-pro. But on the offense, they don't know if they're going to stick with Haskins. Don't really have that number 1 running back yet. They've got McLaurin at wide receiver. He's there. He's young. He's going to be real good. But they're just don't look like they're ready to win right now. Versus the Browns, had an impressive game last week against Joe Burrow and the Bengals. I think that run game is something to behold. They're really going to run it all over people, especially if teams aren't ready. And Washington has a strong defensive line, but I think the Browns still get the run going. I think Baker puts on another decent performance, and they get the win.
Yeah, Browns defense looks pretty good. Actually, no, the Browns defense looked awful. Browns offense last week looks pretty good. Once you can get everybody the ball, Odell, Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb, Jarvis Landry, they have a lot of weapons. I think they're just going to overpower that Washington football team. I mean, that defense, Chase Young, bright spot, but I don't think that secondary can keep up with all their weapons. So I got the Browns.
Next game, we got the Bengals versus the Eagles. This is a really interesting game to me. I think, you've got the young Bengals trying to make their mark. Obviously Burrow having some comments last week about never losing 2 games in a row, and he does not want to keep losing. Eagles starting 0-2. I mean, it's really a question mark for that team right now. Wentz had a pretty ugly performance last week. I think it wasn't as bad as people are making it seem, but it definitely wasn't good. Something that surprised me, though, was they actually didn't give up a sack last week. I seeing them going against the Rams and Aaron Donald, I was thinking they were going to give up 8 sacks. Obviously that's a bit of an exaggeration, but their offensive line is beat up and they managed to give up 0 sacks. I mean, that's impressive. It just shows the coaching game plan and that offensive line manages to bring something together. But I think they're frustrated right now. They don't totally know what their identity is offensively or defensively. I think the Bengals are going to catch them sleeping here. I think they're going to look at the Bengals, think it's an easy win, and Joe Burrow is just going to come out and light them up again. That secondary that has not proven themselves yet, I'm taking Bengals in an upset.
I think right now for the Eagles, it's do or die time. I mean, why is Carson Wentz regressing in year 5? Was that Super Bowl win a fluke? Did Nick Foles really carry Doug Peterson in that team? I mean, after that, you've really seen some pretty subpar performances. Right now, they got to get their act together. Joe Burrow looked pretty good. That Bengals team is a lot better than people think they are. But I think the Eagles are going to win. I feel like it's really do or die time. They really need to win right now. You cannot start the year 0-3 and expect to win your division, no matter how bad your division might be. So yeah, I got the Eagles.
Next game, we've got the Raiders Patriots. This is another really interesting game to me. Two teams that really showed their worth in week 2. Some question marks week 1 for both of them. They come out week 2. Patriots obviously didn't win, but I think they impressed everybody that saw them. And obviously, Raiders showing up last night on Monday Night Football, beating the Saints. I don't know how many people saw that coming, but I mean, they really showed up. But to me, this game is really all going to be all about the quarterbacks and who shows up. Derek Carr, obviously having a heck of a performance, and I think it might be a little bit of an overreaction by some people. Some people thinking very highly of him now. Obviously, he impressed, but that Patriots team is a tough team to beat. But I think the Raiders are going to keep this roll going. I think the Patriots still need to figure themselves out defensively, and the Raiders are hot. They have Darren Waller. They got tons of weapons on offense, and that defense kind of showed up last night. They played the Saints, so it's tough to stop the Saints, and they did do that. I'm going to take the Raiders.
Patriots and Raiders both have played a lot better than people think they were going to play. Raiders with a good win last week against the Saints. Patriots played the Seahawks tough. This is going to be a pretty good matchup. I think Cam's going to keep it rolling. I think he's going to beat the Raiders.
All right, next game, we're going to look at the Bears and Falcons. This is one of those games to me that's a bit of a coin flip. Two teams that aren't the strongest in certain areas, but have on the Bears side, they got that good defense. Falcons side, amazing offense. I still don't quite trust Trubisky and that offense yet. I know he's proven himself 2 weeks, but it was the Giants last week, and they almost didn't win. So I like the Falcons here. I like their offense. I'm going to go Falcons.
This is an interesting matchup. That Bears defense, they had a good week last week against a hurt Giants team. Falcons, I mean, that offense looked great. Defense, obviously not too good. I like the Bears, though. I think I think he's going to play a pretty good game against that weak Falcons defense. I like the Bears. I think they're going to get their run game going. I like them.
Another interesting game, Rams versus Bills. This is an interesting one. Two defensively strong teams with some good offenses. I think you could go either way here in this one. Another tough game. A lot of tough games this week, but I think I like the Bills in this one. Their offense has been showing up these past 2 weeks. Josh Allen really showed up last week. Some deep balls, hitting guys in the end zone. I think the Rams offense still needs to prove itself to me. I mean, they performed well against the Eagles, but that team, isn't the greatest on the defensive side of the ball. Whereas the Bills, obviously didn't play very good defense against the Dolphins, but they did play good in week 1. And I like them here. The Rams defensive line couldn't get pressure against an Eagles team. I like the Bills in this one.
It's a very interesting matchup because, Josh Allen, very mobile quarterback. Rams D-line, pretty good at containing the quarterback, so that's something to look at. I like the Rams, though. I feel like they've played 2 very complete games against the Cowboys and the Eagles. I think they're going to keep it going against that tough Bills defense.
All right, next game, hometown Texans versus your Steelers. Obviously, another interesting matchup. Texans not off to the greatest of starts, but then again, they are playing arguably the top 2 teams in the NFL and the Chiefs and the Ravens. I think Texans still need one of those games to find their rhythm, and this is not that game. They're not going to be able to find a rhythm against that disruptive Steelers defense and defensive line. I think despite signing Laramie Tunsil to a massive contract, they still have questions on that offensive line. Deshaun Watson not getting the greatest of protection and the running backs not doing a whole lot. And I think the biggest question to me is their receivers. Who's that number one? Looked like Will Fuller in week 1, barely even got a look in week 2. It's plus that defense. They've got the defensive line, and yet they give up a ton of rushing yards. It is the Ravens, but still it's a lot of rushing yards. I'm going to take the Steelers in this one. I think that defense overwhelms them, and the offense gets points.
I got to go with my Steelers. I think it's going to be a blowout. I think the offense is going to play well. I think the defense is going to shut down Deshaun Watson. I mean, get Deshaun Watson some help. You trade away his biggest option. Hope in like you need some more help. David Johnson is not that guy. Will Fuller hasn't stepped up. That Steelers defense is going to play very well. This can get out of hand pretty early. Like 20 plus, 30 plus. I got Steelers.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Next game, we got the Titans versus the Vikings. Just an absolute disappointment from the Vikings so far this season. Just completely ugly last week against the Colts. Kirk Cousins just did not look good. I mean, I think the Stephon Diggs loss has done more to hurt them than I think people thought. They just don't have that deep ball target now. You know, they're trying to use Thielen as a deep ball target, but he's just not the same as Diggs. The Titans, on the other hand, I don't think they've quite come up to how people expected them to perform, but they're still getting wins. They're winning in close games, which is important. I think that Vikings team just they got run all over last week. They can't stop the pass. I think the Titans are going to be able to run all over this Vikings team, and that offense is going to have to prove itself to me before I take them. So I'm going to go with the Titans.
I think the Titans are one of the most consistent teams in the NFL. I mean, they know their game. You know that they know that they need to feed Derrick Henry. Tannehill can run as well. They have a pretty good defense. Vikings. I think the Vikings are in some trouble here. You know, like you said, who's that next offensive weapon aside from Dalvin Cook and Adam Thielen? I mean, they need somebody to step up, and they need somebody to step up fast because they are in some danger here. They're already 0-2, can't follow in 3. But I think Derrick Henry's going to give that defense some problems. So I got the Titans.
All right, next game we got the Panthers versus the Chargers. This is an interesting one. The Panthers having a tough week this week, losing Christian McCaffrey for 4 to 6 weeks, I believe is what it is. It really didn't look like a big deal. You know, he kind of just limped after a touchdown, kind of tried to get himself going on the sideline, but couldn't. And turns out he's out 4 to 6 weeks. That is a tough blow to an already struggling Panthers team. I mean, they've got Robbie Anderson on that offense now, but they just Christian McCaffrey is that guy. He's the safety blanket. They run it with him. They pass it to him. Everything goes through him. And when they lose him, you know that's what the defense can focus on. And now they just really don't have that weapon to go to. I think the defense has also really struggled these first 2 weeks. And the Chargers obviously showed up huge last week, as we talked about earlier, against the Chiefs. To me, it's a bit of a question of who starts, Herbert or Tyrod. Herbert starts, I think I take Chargers easy in this one. If Tyrod starts, bit of a question mark for me, but I'm still going to go Chargers.
Yeah, McCaffrey is the Panthers offense. He's that Panthers team. Without McCaffrey, you know, he's their biggest leader, their best player. I don't think they're much. That Chargers defense is already very good. That Panthers offense, they're going to struggle against that Chargers defense. I got the Chargers.
All right, next game we got the Jets versus the Colts. I think the consensus worst team in the NFL here, the Jets, just have not looked good at all this year, despite adding that their massive left tackle, Mekhi Becton. I think he's probably been their best player so far this year, which is not good to say when your left tackle's your best player. But I think the Colts looked really good last week. You know, you look at Rivers' stat line from last week, 214 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. You know, it really doesn't look that great. But I went back and I watched the highlights of that game, and he did a good job of controlling it. They didn't put it in his hands too much. They ran the ball a lot. Jonathan Taylor, 26 carries, 101 yards. I looked back, and that was more carries that week than Aaron Jones, Nick Chubb, Zeke, and Derrick Henry. So, you know, they gave it to him a lot, more than some of the biggest backs in the league, and he did well. 26 carries, 101 yards. For a rookie running back, that's great. And that Jets team has not been able to contain anything. Even a super hurt 49ers team, they still did not perform. I'm going Colts.
Yeah, you saw that play last week where it was 3rd and 31, and the Niners ran 55 yards on the Jets. I mean, Adam Gase, I think he's really holding back those young guys. Jamal Adams got out of there when he could. Sam Darnold, you know, I think he's a lot better than what people are actually, you know, what he's playing as. I think the Colts, they got some good young talent there with Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman. I think Rivers can get both of them the ball. I think the Colts started off pretty slow week 1 against the Jags, played very well against the Vikings. They got that good defense led by DeForest Buckner. I think they're going to keep it going. I think they're going to beat the Jets.
All right, next game we got the Cowboys versus the Seahawks. think we know who I'm going to pick here. I'm going Seahawks. I mean, it'll be an interesting game. I think it's possible that Cowboys defensive line dominates and contains Russell Wilson, but so far we haven't seen any team be able to do that so far. I think the only way that the Cowboys win this one is if that Seahawks defense just collapses. But I just don't think the Cowboys defense in its current state can contain what the Seahawks have done so far. So I'm going Seahawks.
The Cowboys, I think the Cowboys need to protect the ball. I mean, they fumbled it way too many times last week. Dak, Zeke, whatever their tight end is. I mean, they just didn't play very well. They got pretty lucky there. They turned it on towards the end. That defense has got to be better. You can't allow 40 points to your opponent and expect to win in this league. Seahawks, I think Russell Wilson is making an early case for MVP. I mean, he's playing very well. DK Metcalf's going to have a great year. I got the Seahawks in this one.
All right, next game, we got the Lions versus the Cardinals. Really impressive week again from Kyler Murray. Showed up in week 1 against the 49ers when they were healthy, and now showing up in week 2, only against the Washington football team, but still, he looked amazing. The Lions started well against the Packers last week, but just in the end couldn't contain them. I think the Cardinals offense is a real potent one of the best ones in the NFL so far, at least. They've got Hopkins and Murray have just clicked much sooner than anyone really thought they would. And that Lions defense is real hurt, real young. I just do not think they're going to be able to contain the Cardinals enough to stop them. I'm going Cardinals.
I really like the Cardinals team. They're still my dark horse to win the Super Bowl. Kyler Murray, super explosive. Pair that with DeAndre Hopkins. That's a pretty deadly duo there. I think they're going to steamroll the Lions. I don't think the Lions are very good.
All right, next game, we've got the Bucs versus the Broncos. Another team bit by the injury bug. Broncos losing Drew Lock. They also lost Cortland Sutton on just a freak play, trying to chase down a guy on an interception and just completely tore up his knee. From what I've heard, it's at least the ACL tear and a couple more things messed up in his knee, perhaps MCL, other ligaments in there. But, I mean, that is just terrible. He's a young receiver. Really looked like he was going to break out this year, and now he's probably done for it. So it's really sad there, but that Bucs team really caught their stride last week, obviously playing a weak defense in the Panthers, but I think they're kind of finding their identity. They've got that running back by committee, Ronald Jones, Leonard Fournette, and Brady and Evans really clicked last week. I thought they looked great. That defense still a little bit shaky, need to prove themselves a little bit more, but I'm going Bucs.
No, it's really unfortunate. I was looking forward to seeing that young Broncos offense. Cortland Sutton, Drew Lock. Fortunately, they're both hurt now. I thought they were going to have an outstanding year. Jeff Driscoll actually did a pretty good job of stepping in and giving them a chance to win the game last week against the Steelers. I got Brady in the Bucs. I think they're gonna beat them up pretty badly.
Next game, we got an interesting matchup: Packers versus Saints. I believe this one is on Sunday Night Football. That's a great matchup at the quarterback position. Obviously, Drew Brees and Aaron Rodgers. I think they're under a bit different circumstances, though. Aaron Rodgers showing up as another early MVP candidate and showing out versus Drew Brees last week. A lot of question marks after that game. Was not throwing the ball downfield. People questioning his arm strength at this point in his career. Can he do what he did? I think it might be a bit of an overreaction on Drew Brees. I think it was just a weak game. They obviously didn't have Michael Thomas. You lose your number one receiver, that's going to have an effect on your offense. But I think the Packers are just hot right now. They've got Aaron Jones continuing what he did from last year into this year. Devontae Adams already shown himself as one of the best receivers in the league. And that defense is serviceable. I mean, they've got the pass rush with the Smith brothers, and their cornerbacks are pretty good. I think at this point, especially with Michael Thomas out, they just outdo the Saints in a lot of different categories. I'm going Packers.
I said last week that if the Saints want to win their division, that tough NFC South, they got to win games like the Raiders. They got to beat the Raiders if they want to win their division. And they were unable to do that. Are they able to bounce back against a pretty strong Packers team across the board? I don't think so. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to have an outstanding game. I think Devontae Adams is going to get involved. Had a bit of a down week last week, but I think he'll bounce back. I think they'll win big.
All right, next game, probably game of the week. We got Chiefs versus Ravens. I think a consensus top 2 teams in the NFL. It's really a coin flip here. I mean, we haven't seen either of them be challenged too much. Funnily enough, both of them played the Texans, and both of them beat them pretty good. But I think it's really interesting. It'll be interesting to see how the Chiefs contain that rushing attack of the Ravens. They had 230 rushing yards versus the Texans. I mean, that's just crazy. The Texans, they're not known exactly for their rush defense. They're not the greatest in that department, but 230 rushing yards, that's very impressive. And I think that factor for me is kind of why I'm leaning their way. Chiefs gave up 183 rushing yards to the Chargers, and the Chargers don't exactly have the greatest offensive line, and yet they're giving up that rushing attack. Chiefs have the passing game; they could easily pass it all over the Ravens, but I think that Ravens defense shores up. It's going to be a shootout, but I think the Ravens have enough to stop them and enough offense to outscore them. I'm going to go Ravens.
Yeah, I think it's also going to be a shootout. I think the matchup to watch is Mahomes against that Ravens secondary. Marcus Peters, Marlon Humphrey. They got some good pieces there. That's going to be interesting to watch. Lamar Jackson, I think he's going to rip apart that Chiefs defense. I don't think they're very good. I got the Ravens.
All right. Well, that's our picks for week 3. Thank you guys for watching. Obviously, we're going to come back next week, see how we did, and look forward to week 4. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.